Hello, welcome to another YouTube Live. I'm here on Monday, every Monday at 7. So thank you for joining me today. And today we're going to talk about fear, courage, and big emotions, or emotions that perhaps maybe we find a little bit challenging. So generally speaking, those are the emotions that people tend to avoid: fear, anger, sadness. So that can happen. So welcome. Thank you for joining. And today I'm going to talk about some personal experiences. And fear is one emotion that I feel I can talk a lot about. I've had a lot of experience with fear. And those of you who know my story, who know how I got into this work, who have listened to the first episode of the podcast, you will know what I'm talking about. And yeah, so fear was a huge challenge for me because I was experiencing weekly panic attacks. And essentially that is getting so caught up in fear that you create this cycle, this loop that you're just caught in, and it ends up becoming a panic attack. And essentially at the very root of that are unexpressed emotions. And a lot of that is to do with fear, feeling fearful about things, feeling worried about things, feeling anxious about things, and not expressing that. So yeah, there's a lot I can share on this topic. This is one of the emotions that I feel I can talk a lot about. And I was actually writing a blog post as well. So there will be a blog post coming out about this as well at some point. So those of you who are on the YouTube Live, thank you. And those who enjoy the podcast, I will post a little link also in the description that links you to an episode where I talk about emotions as well. I'm putting things everywhere. So we got the podcast, we got YouTube, we got Instagram, we got the blog post, we got the newsletter, Telegram, WhatsApp, everything. So it's all there. So you can choose what modality you prefer. I have recently I've been asking feedback on people, like I've sent out a feedback form, getting curious about like how people like to receive this information, like what platforms they prefer. And at the moment, Instagram, podcasts, and YouTube are the three that are on email as well. Those are the ones that are coming out as the favorites. So thank you for being here, and let's dive into today's topic. So fear. So first of all, emotions, what are they? And emotions are very useful. Sometimes we see them as inconvenient and a bit of a bother, or things that we can't manage or control, though they can be extremely useful. Emotions give us an indication of the quality of our thoughts, like what we're thinking about, what we're focused on. And when there are lots of worries, when we're focused on a lot of negativity, then emotions can build up because everything's connected. When I was teaching practitioner students for many years, I'm an NLP trainer, trained in NLP, and I was training new coaches, new practitioners. And when I was teaching them, we were talking a lot about this and how the mind-body connection is so linked. And I used the traditional NLP communication model and I transformed it into a wheel, and it's what I call the mind-body wheel. And for me, it was a really easy way just to understand that, okay, yeah, what we think about has an influence on how we feel and how our actions and our body, our physiology plays out. Like if we're constantly thinking negative thoughts and we're criticizing ourselves and judging ourselves, we're not going to feel very good. We're not going to feel very good about ourselves. And then what tends to happen with the physiology is that our body responds to that. So we start hunching over a little bit more, like feeling more shy, feeling more self-conscious, lacking confidence, and the body responds to that. And then our actions what can tend to happen is that when we're in that state, we don't necessarily feel like we want to make a change or go and speak to someone new or try something new. We might withdraw, hold back. So you can see just how that all links up. Our thoughts have a huge impact on our experience in life, and vice versa, because it's a wheel. It goes in both ways. So if we step out of the comfort zone, try something new, like try a new action, then that can have a knock-on effect on our physiology. That can also have a knock-on effect on how we feel. We might feel more uplifted. We might feel more adrenaline. We're like, yeah, okay, I'm doing something new. That then has an impact on our thoughts. So everything's connected. And this is important to know. This is important to know because emotions don't just appear out of nowhere. Like when we're talking about our emotions, obviously, if we're someone who's incredibly sensitive and intuitive, you can pick up on emotions from other people, and then it can feel like it just pops up out of nowhere and you're sensing what someone else is feeling. Though when we're talking about our own emotions, they don't just pop up out of nowhere. They can feel like that. Though if we trace our thoughts back, often we can notice that there's some thread there. There's some thread that has contributed to how we're feeling. Or if we look at our lifestyle or how we're moving our body or how we're sitting, our body posture, we can notice that there's a thread there that connects everything together, connects all the dots together. So emotions, essentially at the very core of them, they're energy in motion, hence the name. Emotion, energy in motion. And this is not something that's woo-woo out there. Like, this has been proven by scientists, like the time and time again, that everything in this world, in this universe, is made up of space, matter, vibrating particles, energy, consciousness, all of that. If you want to go into that in more depth, you can check out what the quantum physicists are talking about. You can explore different scientists out there. This is not my job, and this is not what I'm going to do, talk about the science of things, though it has been proven. So energy in motion, emotions. And everything is energy, right? So if we're feeling an emotion, anger, sadness, fear, I will talk predominantly about those three ones because those are the ones that people find most challenging. Though today with a little bit more of a focus on fear. And if we're talking about those emotions, then what can happen is that energy flows through us, and it's something that is amplified, that can grow bigger according to our mind. Our mind is an amplifier. So if we're focused on it and we're thinking certain thoughts about it, we can amplify it, make it bigger, or we can block it, obstruct that energy in motion. So then we suppress it, we avoid it, we stuff it down, we swallow it, we don't want to look at it. And that can be an issue, not only just for well-being, but also for health as well. And I know from experience, this is one of the biggest reasons why I experienced weekly panic attacks many years ago. This was one of the reasons why there was so much coming up, because I had suppressed so much for so many years. And it comes to a point where you just cannot suppress anymore. And the body doesn't lie. The body it will always come out somewhere, somehow. So if we're swallowing an emotion, if we're avoiding emotion, it will come up somehow, somewhere. Maybe not in that moment if we're avoiding it or suppressing it, but it will come out somehow, somewhere. So the best thing to do really is to acknowledge it as soon as we possibly can, and learn from it and feel it and notice it and allow that to move through us, to breathe with it rather than trying to avoid it. One of the reasons why we tend to avoid emotions, why we tend to run away from them, is because of that discomfort. We're naturally wanting to look for comfort. We're naturally wanting to feel good and comfortable and safe. So if anything feels a little bit uncomfortable or there's some discomfort there, then we naturally move away from that. So of course, if there's emotion that feels a bit uncomfortable and we've been trained to feel that's uncomfortable through beliefs or through what we've heard from others, then we'll reinforce that even more. So the beliefs are really important. Like, what do we believe about emotions? Like, what do I believe about fear? What do I believe about anger? What do I believe about sadness? What do I believe about those emotions? Like, do I believe it's wrong to express anger or sadness or to be fearful? Like, do I believe that people who are fearful are fill in the blank? Like, a great way to notice what beliefs we hold are to notice what comes up at the end of the sentence. If we give a beginning of a sentence and then allow our mind to fill in the blank. So being fearful or feeling fear means or is ... Notice what comes up. Being a fearful person ... means, is ... But just notice what comes up. And with anger, like being an angry person or expressing anger means or is ... Angry people are, sad people are, fearful people are. So just get curious about what comes up when you finish those sentences, and if there are any beliefs there that perhaps could be limiting your experience of a particular emotion. Because if we believe that fear is wrong, it's low vibrational, it's not spiritual, we need to be love and light, like only focus on love and light, which is a very common thing in the spiritual communities and conscious communities. Though, to be honest, is a very unconscious thing to do, ironically. And to only focus on love and light is to miss the whole complete experience of this human realm that we're in. There's a big difference between moving through an emotion, moving through fear, and remaining stuck in it. And I've been in both. I've remained stuck in fear for a long time regarding certain situations in the past. And I've also experienced moving through fear and noticing what comes through that. So what happens when fear comes up, like if there are certain beliefs there can be tendencies to freeze, hold our breath, not breathe. That's a very common tendency. And that's often what happens with the panic attacks. Like, that's the first thing that's affected is the breath. Like, we hold our breath and we breathe only from the upper part of the chest, and everything is within this area, rather than coming back down into the body and breathing slowly, fully, and deeply from the belly. That's what helps the anxiety and the panic attacks, is slowing the breath, coming back down to the belly breaths. So there's this tendency to freeze. There can be the tendency to flight, to run away, to avoid. So as I was talking about earlier, to avoid something, to run away from something. So if we're fearful about relationships or commitment in relationships, there can be a tendency to run away whenever some sign of commitment or deeper connection comes up. There can be the tendency to fight. So notice these all begin with F. So we've got freeze, flight, fight. So sometimes when people are feeling fear, they actually lash out. They lash out with words, or they could get physical. They feel fear on some level and they lash out, they react to that, they fight. And then one of the other ones is fawning, which is people pleasing. So there could be a fear that there'll be that you won't be accepted or loved by someone. So then you fawn, you people please, you praise, you like, but to the extreme that you give lots of praise to the other. So then out of fear, because you're fearful of losing that person, or a disconnect happening, or them getting upset with you or criticizing you. So you do the complete opposite out of fear. So those are the 4 things that can happen when fear arises: freezing, flight, like flying away, running away, avoiding it; fight, so attacking it in some way; and then fawning, so people pleasing. And these things are very common. These things are things that many people have learnt through childhood as a way to feel loved and accepted by their caretakers or their peers, the other children in the school. That in order to be accepted, then certain behaviours were learnt. And none of this is necessarily a bad thing. We don't need to look at ourselves with judgment and blame and shame. It's just noticing what is and what has been up until now. And then there's an opportunity to change that if you choose. And only if you choose. So that's a little indication of like how we tend to navigate fear when it comes up. And often there can be this fear of the past. So that's when trauma comes in, and post-traumatic stress disorder. There can be fears about past experiences. There can be fear about future experiences. Is about this like unknown, like uncertainty. And again, the beliefs and the perspective come into this, like what do I believe about uncertainty? What do I believe about like the unknown? Like, is it something super scary, or is it something like, exciting? There's loads of possibilities and opportunities there. Just noticing how we see things. And this is not about perfection. This is not about getting it all 100% right and always doing everything perfectly and never fearing fear. Because often we have a lot of fear of fear itself. It's not about getting to the point where we never fear it, and it's not about never feeling it. It's just noticing, how can I transform the relationship with it, even if that's just like 1%. 1% opening up to curiosity, loving curiosity. Just 1% more. Just 1% more coming back to the breath, coming back to the body. Just being present with whatever is coming up. So I like to see emotions as doors. So those of you who have listened to the podcast, those of you who are familiar with my work, I talk a lot about this, about how emotions are doors. So we can shut the door or we can open the door. We can shut the door on fear and try to avoid it and not even like want to know what fear is bringing up for us. Or we can open the door and move through it, notice what lies beyond that, because every emotion leads on to something else. There's an opportunity, there's a gift, there's an insight. It leads on to something else. So the thing that fear, when we move through it, what that leads us on to is courage. Fear invites us to connect with courage. So we can avoid it, we can run away from it, we can try to fight it, we can get caught up in it and stuck in it, or we can move through it. We allow that emotion to flow through us, and we end up connecting with courage. So a wonderful way to move through that is to, first of all, like, notice what, and this goes with any emotion, like any big emotion. And I say big, I mean really, they're all emotions, they're all equal, they're all neutral. It's just how we tend to view them as society. So any emotion, but especially fear, like first just noticing, like noticing and observing what's coming up and allowing ourselves to feel that. Then coming to the breath, like allowing ourselves to breathe with that, through that. It's like, oh, I'm noticing fear. I'm noticing that my breath is shortening. Okay, breathe. Just breathe. Bring awareness to the breath. Or I notice that I'm getting nervous or fidgety, or my palms are sweating. Breathe. Slow, deep breaths. Breathe. Bring awareness to that. Bring your focus to one point, the breath, the inhale, the exhale. Just come back to that. Now, if you've been struggling with anxiety, or if this has been an issue, if you've been looking into different things that can help with anxiety or fear or other emotions, and you might have heard people talking about the breath before, and your mind might be, like, for some people, the mind might be saying, oh yeah, I know this, I've heard this, oh yeah, it doesn't work. Breathe. Come back to the breath. Come back to the breath. This is the thing, the mind loves the new. It loves it wants the new fancy technique. It wants the latest trend. It wants anything that's sparkly and it's like a magpie, as my teacher used to say at university. And it wants that, and then often it overlooks the simple things, the simple day-to-day things that we can do. Breath. We have this incredible tool, bringing awareness to the breath. And it's simple, and the mind might not like it, though it's incredibly powerful. And I can say from years of navigating anxiety and huge amounts of fear, that and overcoming weekly panic attacks, that's now not a thing anymore. It used to be in the past, but it's not a thing anymore. Breath was one of the biggest things. Slowing the breath, coming back to the breath. It's one of the biggest things that can create a difference. So that's what can help. And then, especially with fear, what we can do, what can help us move through that and help us connect with courage, is asking ourselves the question, what loving action can I take now? So first we feel it, observe it, notice it, breathe. Then we ask ourselves the question, like perhaps there's some learning there, some insight that pops up. And we ask the question, what loving action can I take now? Because that's the thing, like that's how we connect with courage. It's like moving through it. Courage comes from the Latin word cor, which is all to do with the heart. It's like connecting to the heart and moving through something. So often there's this tendency to view courage as being fearless, like not feeling fear at all. And that can be further from the truth. For some people, it might be like that. Though really, for the most people, like courage really is fear in loving action. They feel the fear, they're nervous, like, oh, okay, I need to have a big conversation with someone, or I need to quit my job, or I need to apply for this new job, or I need to ask someone out, or I need to, like, whatever it is that they want to do. And they're feeling all this fear coming up. Stepping into the courage that's feeling it and taking loving action regardless. Loving, constructive action. So an action that is good for your well-being, is beneficial, is constructive, loving action, whatever that is. Facing it. Because if we continue to run away from it, fight it, doesn't work. I've tried that. That was one of the biggest things. The more I was fighting the panic attacks, the more I was really like trying to control it and manage it and fight it, the bigger they became, the worse they became. The more I surrendered, the more I came back to the breath, the more I brought love into that, the easier it became. Of course, there were other things that helped. You can check out my podcast if you want to hear more about that. Though that was one of the biggest things. And that there's so many other things that can help. So many other things. There's just really coming back to this loving awareness, this gentle, curious, loving awareness. So we can learn from an experience, we can move through the experience and then take action, like move through that. Other times where I've taken action, I felt the fear, but I did it anyway. Like that's the saying. There's a couple of books by Susan Jeffers that feel the fear, do it anyway. And that's where the phrase comes from. And yeah, it's just taking action and like facing it head on. So a few things that I did. So for many years when I was younger, I was terrified of heights. Terrified. Like I would just feel like, oh, it was just too much. Now, nowadays, I wouldn't necessarily choose to stand on the tallest building on a glass floor and with like not much of a barrier. Probably not many people would. Though how I feel about it now is completely different to before. Before I felt like really like lots of vertigo and feeling really scared. And what I did is I chose to face that. So what I did is I booked myself on a skydive and jumped out of an aeroplane to face my fear. And that was like one big experience of moving through fear and then just connecting to that courage. And after that experience, you feel like, wow, okay, yes, this is incredible. I've actually moved through this. Another experience, the first time that I learned how to snorkel, I felt incredibly fearful and scared because when I was younger, I almost drowned in a swimming pool. So there was this fear of, oh, it's going to happen again. I won't be able to breathe. I won't survive. I'm going to die, blah, blah, blah. Like as the mind goes through all of these stories. So the first time I learned how to snorkel, I had a panic attack in the water. And I moved through that. Again, connecting to the breath and seeking support. And I ended up later on, a few weeks later, being able to swim underwater to some underwater caves. Now, I won't necessarily do that every single day. It's not, not my favorite thing to do, though facing the fear and moving through that can be incredibly empowering because when we do that, we reconnect to the strength within, we reconnect to that courage that is always there. Sometimes we forget that when we're in our little comfort zone with our comfort blanket and everything's comfortable and we're like, yeah, I'm safe here. This feels good. I'm going to be in this little bubble or this little situation or this little environment or only go to the places that I know. Or like when we're in that little bubble, sometimes we forget that inner strength. We forget about that. And it's not until we break through that and move through that and try something new and feel the fear, take loving action anyway, and do whatever it is that we want to do, that we suddenly remember the strength. Another experience I had, I remember years ago after a breakup, that I was feeling that lack of inner strength. Like I felt obviously heartbroken, though at the same time I was feeling very, yeah, I just forgotten about my strength. I was had been in this comfortable state for a long time. So what I did is I booked myself onto a training where we did a firewalk. Now, those of you who don't know about firewalks are when you and only do this with trained professionals, okay? This is not something to try by yourself. So a firewalk is when you walk barefoot across hot coals that you can literally barbecue things on. And you do that and there are no burns whatsoever because you do it with a certain mindset and a certain frame of mind, and like you do it in a safe way when you're with a trained professional. So I did that. That was something that I was terrified about, walking across hot coals, though I did it because I knew that it was so it was so far out of my comfort zone that it was going to be really beneficial for me to do that and to reconnect to that strength within and remember of what I can do, what is possible. And now I have that experience to remember that experience, like stepping off the coals, like walking 2 meters across the hot coals, stepping off, absolutely fine. My feet were absolutely fine, no burns whatsoever. And that was an incredible experience. So if there's something that you're feeling fearful about, you don't necessarily have to do a firewalk. Though if there's something that you're feeling fearful about, notice what that is, notice what's coming up, notice what thoughts and beliefs might be there. Like just notice it, feel into it, breathe through it, and then ask yourself, what loving action can you take to move through that? And if you need support, by all means get support, whether that's from friends, loved ones, a professional, whoever, whether that's a community or a group. Like if you need extra support, then find that. Though it's all about moving through those emotions, like moving through and allowing ourselves to see the gifts on the other side. Because if we remain stuck in that fear, I would never have had that experience of feeling the incredible rush and adrenaline after doing a skydive or walking across hot coals or facing the fear of going underwater or any of those fearful moments where I needed to have a big conversation with someone or end a relationship, but I was feeling fear, but I did it anyway. It's after doing it, then you realize that was the best thing ever. The best thing ever to listen to what's within your heart and to listen to what is for your highest good and doing that. So obviously this is a huge topic and there are so many different areas and ways that fear can pop up. I mean, each and every emotion is like a color of the rainbow, and within that color you've got the whole spectrum of different tones and shades and lightness and darkness of that color. There can be this little inkling of fear, like a little nervousness, or there can be full-on terror. And I've experienced both. And sometimes, like when you're experiencing big moments of fear, like my experience that I had in a relationship that ended up being abusive towards the end. Now that was full-on terror that I felt, and that took time to move through that. There was a lot of trauma from that, and that was when I needed support. That's when I sought out professionals and worked with people to move through that. Though when it's something small, you like just having maybe like a small little conversation with someone, or feeling a little nervous to go into a new place, or meeting someone new, like going on a date and feeling a little nervous, then that's something that, just noticing it, come back to the breath and just take that loving action. So just keep asking yourself, like, what loving action can I take? That's the key to moving through. And every single emotion, whether that's fear, whether that is anger, whether that is sadness, whatever it is, there's always an opportunity, a gift, an insight, something to learn from that. Emotions are messengers. They're coming up to bring a message. Sometimes the mind can be focused on worst case scenarios, or it can think about the future and worry about the future, and then fear comes up from that. So often what I would do is I would actually thank fear. Let's say thank you to fear whenever it came up. And I even wrote letters to fear. Dear fear, thank you for reminding me about this, or reminding me about how valuable that is for me. Or for example, you send a message to someone and you don't hear from them, and then the mind goes into worst case scenario. So that's the fear coming up right there. So what I do is I thank fear, and I say, thank you, fear, for reminding me how much I value that person and how that person is important to me. It's transforming our relationship with it, transforming how we see these emotions. And when we do that, they don't become these massive things that we need to run away from. Fear is not something to avoid. As I talked about in the beginning, often in spiritual communities, there can be this tendency to always see fear as this, oh, it's bad, it's low vibration, it's mustn't feel fear, only love and light. Though when you're feeling fear of fear, you're just making it even worse. And that's not experiencing the full human experience. The full human experience is everything, feeling all the emotions and just bringing awareness to that. Not to remain stuck in them, but bringing awareness to that and breathing through them. Then that's when we connect to the magic on the other side. That's when we step into courage and we remember our strength. So if there's something that you're feeling fearful about and you're noticing, okay, I'm a bit nervous about that, ask yourself, what loving action can I take that's for your highest good and well-being in this lifetime, that can help you to live the most amazing life in this lifetime? And if you need support with that, then ask your friends, ask loved ones, or seek support from a professional, whether that's with myself, whether that's with someone else. I've helped many, many people over the last 10 years, especially about fear and anxiety, as that's what I have a lot of experience with. And this is something I know many tools and techniques that can really help. Breath and everything else that I've mentioned in this class today are the starting points, though there are many other things as well. So if you're watching this and you want some extra support with this, then you can get in touch, info@emmabradford.net. There's plenty more information on the website. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and your comments on this, and if there are any questions, and if there are any specific topics you want me to cover on these weekly YouTube lives or on the podcast as well, that comes out every 2 weeks, then please do let me know. Get in touch. I love receiving comments and connecting with you all. So the next podcast will be out on Wednesday. It's coming out on Wednesday. That's on YouTube, and also all of the other platforms, all the podcast platforms out there. So everything from Spotify to Anchor to Apple, it's everywhere. It's called Creating Change with Emma Bradford, and Wednesday's episode is all about the shadow of the coaching industry and social media and how I'm navigating it. So big topic, very interesting topic, and something that has been a huge learning curve for me, and I'm sure many other people as well. So I'll be sharing more about that on Wednesday on the podcast, and I'll be back again next week with another YouTube Live. So thank you so much for watching, for being here, for being you, and please do get in touch if you want to learn more about how you want to navigate emotions, the mind, work with the unconscious mind, and really fall back in love with yourself and life. Wishing you a lovely week. Much love.